Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Instruction and Professional Development Fall Webinar Series. Today, we're talking about positive behavioral interventions. And my name is Karen Taylor, and I'll be your host today of this webinar. So I just want to go through some housekeeping with all of you. So we have a couple features that we are going to use in this webinar. So on my screen here is a screenshot of what you should have on your own screen. And I just wanted to show you a few features. So if you click on this orange button here, you're going to close out your menu. You can use the hands up feature. We're going to raise our hands a few times. So actually right now as we're going through this, can you please find that feature and raise your hand for me so I can see that you found it? And welcome everyone. I see some people are still coming in. So there's about 100 of you today. So as you find that raise your hand feature, if you could raise your hand, please. Fantastic. Thank you so much. So then you also have handouts, and we have 5 handouts for you today, which our guest presenters will talk a little bit about. And there's also a copy of the presentation in a Google folder that we will give you as well. Just want to remind you that today's webinar is being recorded, and anyone who attends this webinar or who is not able to attend this webinar but signed up will receive a copy of today's recording about an hour or so after the end of the webinar, and you'll also get the link within that email to the handouts, okay? I just want to remind you, I've sent out a couple notices that you will need your cell phone today because we're going to play Kahoot. So we're going to have a little contest. If you've been on our webinars before, then you're familiar with this, but we're going to be doing some giveaways, and so you might want to take some notes. So today we have some very special guest presenters from the Lake Elsinore Teachers Association. These 4 educators are social emotional learning support providers within a multi-tiered system of support in their school district. And if you're interested in learning more about multi-tiered systems of support, we actually did a webinar in the spring about this, and you can find that on the same trainings page where you signed up for this webinar. So I just want to share that the following presenters are Sarah Egbert, Bridget Gross, Valerie Vargas, and Brandy Willoughby. They'll be leading us through the training today. We're also going to be using the question feature, so there will be a couple times during the webinar today where you'll be able to ask questions, and hopefully we'll be able to respond to a lot of them. We do have 120 people, and it's growing on this webinar today, so we may not be able to get to everyone's questions. So the roadmap. By the end of this presentation, you'll walk away knowing some proactive classroom management components, how to integrate social skills in the classroom, and how to gain some social emotional learning resources. We're really excited about sharing all of this with you. So before I give you over to my presenters, I have a couple of polls. So the first one I'd like to ask you is, how long have you been teaching? So that should be popping up in your screen. And I'll give you about 30 seconds to fill that out. So it looks like we have about 13% of our attendees are first-year teachers, 22% are 2- to 5-year teachers, about 22% of you are 6- to 12-year teachers, 16% of you are 13- to 18-year teachers, and 29% of you have been teaching for 19 years or more. Thank you all for being here today. And then I have one other question to ask you. What grade level do you teach? So it looks pretty even. We have a lot of TK through K teachers, about 16%, 24% of you are 1st and second grade teachers. About 25% of you are third and fourth grade teachers. About 11% of you are fifth and sixth grade teachers. And then we do have almost a quarter of our attendees are seventh grade or up. So you can see that on your screen. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Valerie, who is going to get us started on proactive classroom management components.
Hi there, this is Valerie Vargas. As she just said, we're going to review some proactive classroom management components. The first one is classroom behavioral expectations. So a good handful of you are experienced teachers, and so whether through trial or error you learned this, setting classroom behavior expectations, posting them, teaching them, reviewing them, and having them known by every student is a proactive classroom strategy. Students can become clear on what desired behaviors are, and pre-correction prevents occurrences of problems. We're going to focus a lot on the why this is important and explaining why to students. It is to prevent negative behaviors when you explain to students why the expectation exists. We as a team got this from Diana Browning's Write 16 Proactive Classroom Management Components, which you can actually find in the handouts. So one pretty basic classroom behavioral expectation is to walk in quietly. For the majority of your students, you can lay that expectation and you will have them walk in quietly. But for those students who tend to have some behavioral issues, you could explain why they need to walk in quietly. So for example, because you need to practice entering professional settings appropriately, or it will help you when you have a job, or it also allows the teacher to set up and prepare the classroom. Another common classroom behavior expectation is do not talk while the teacher's talking. You could explain why. Because we need to practice mutual respect. The teacher has important information for the class or other students. Even if you don't want to listen, others need to. Another one, write down your homework in your planner at the start of class. You could explain, because we don't have time later, or because you need to communicate with your parents or guardians, or because the teacher needs to make sure everyone understands their expectations. I'm going to pause and just give you guys a little story. I had a teacher who approached me with a problem that her student wasn't writing the information down in the planner. And I probed and asked why, and she was saying, well, he just can't physically write. He doesn't enjoy writing. The physical part of the writing was the issue. And so I asked her the objective of the expectation. She said, because I need to communicate with parents. So collaboratively, we found out another way to reach that objective, which is to have a peer support him in writing that, because it still achieves the same behavioral expectation in just a different way. So it escapes the power struggle, and instead you provide a reasonable explanation, thus diminishing the negative behaviors. The last example I have is all four on the floor, which is something teachers say for students who lean back in their chair. And you can easily explain to students, well, it's for safety reasons, but it is also important to provide a replacement behavior to accommodate the function of that behavior. Again, this is all to counter getting into a power struggle, because you're explaining why to students the behavioral expectations are there in the first place.
Hi there, this is Sarah Egbert, and our next component is motivation systems. Motivation systems should be in place with the intention of increasing desirable behavior and the likelihood of that positive behavior occurring in the future. A classroom motivation system can also be used to increase the student's desire to participate in or complete non-preferred tasks.
So I'd like to ask you if you can raise your hand if you currently use a type of motivation system in your classroom. So it looks like about 1/3 of attendees actually, almost one, yeah, maybe 40% of people on here actually use some type of motivation system in their classroom. So let me clear that out.
I find it helpful to relate this back to myself. Even as teachers or employees, we work on a token system, and our token system happens to be monthly in the form of a paycheck. So as adults who have acquired some skills, we can delay that gratification, but a lot of times students need to be taught these skills specifically, and every student comes with their own intrinsic motivation, their own range of preferred activities or content areas, and likewise, they have their own preferences for reinforcement or preferences for incentive. So because of these preferences, a motivation system is not a one-size-fits-all system. We actually have provided in the handouts today a forced reinforcement inventory that you can access to provide a survey to students to identify what they are motivated by. And this forced choice reinforcement survey will outline 5 different categories for student preferences. So if a student is looking for adult approval, you might want to have the student earn lunch with the teacher or a positive note home. We might discover that our individual student is driven by competitive approval. So earning table points or teacher versus student points would be a system that would be motivating. If a student is looking for peer approval, having a goal to be the group leader or to be a peer buddy would be an effective strategy. Sometimes individual rewards are motivating, like stickers, pencils, supplies, preferred activity time, classroom money in the classroom store would be an individual reward. Now, consumable rewards such as candy, pizza parties, or snacks, those can be very effective. We definitely initially want to have a higher frequency in order to create successful and positive experiences and to establish student buy-in. So if we want to control the frequency with which we administer some of those reinforcements like candy or pizza parties, there are many systems that we can use in our classroom to increase the frequency of reinforcement. And so on our next slide, we're going to look at some of the ways we can use reinforcers in the classroom. So some examples of motivation systems. For one, brag tags. Brag tags can be found for specific skills like being a good friend, following instructions, for character traits like compassion, self-control, and we can even make them customizable to be very specific to praise students for certain social skills. The bucket filler system is based on the book Have You Filled a Bucket Today? And this provides an opportunity for students to acknowledge each other for their words and actions. And it talks about how when we fill others' buckets, in turn, we fill our own. So this system encourages students to look for positivity from their peers and acknowledge them. A classroom money system is a great way for students to learn a variety of skills, but also to reinforce by them having access to some individual reinforcements. And finally, a token economy system is a system based on systematic reinforcement of a target behavior. It uses symbols or tokens that can be exchanged for incentives. It's an evidence-based strategy based on operant conditioning and behavioral economics. And this is a great system for giving consumable rewards.
And I just want to add that I was a middle school teacher and I loved the classroom money system. That worked well with my students. So do any of our viewers have any questions on motivation systems for Sarah? Because we'd like to take a few minutes to answer some questions from the audience if people have them. So remember, there's a little, there should be a little menu that you have, and if you click on questions, you can go ahead and type that in. I don't see any questions so far related to this. So I'm just going to give people a minute to type in questions if they have them related to motivation systems. And while we're waiting, Sarah, do you have any questions that you get from teachers that you'd like to share with the audience?
Sure, I do. One of the common questions I get is, a teacher might say, I used that token economy system yesterday and the student shoved it across the table and he didn't like it, so it didn't work. What do I do now? And oftentimes I will tell the teacher that behavior modification takes time and it takes fidelity. So while we may not see immediate change in a student's behavior, with time and by establishing that buy-in. I mentioned earlier that we really want to begin with a high frequency of a reinforcement so that we can create a positive experience for students. So when we create that positive experience and continue with fidelity, over time, we will see improvement.
Awesome. Okay, so we have some really great questions. I can relate to the first one because my husband's an art prep teacher. So this is from Anthony Vasquez. He says, I'm a music prep teacher, which I'm assuming means he's a roving itinerant teacher that kind of provides preps for other teachers and teaches students music. He says, are there more specific strategies for prep teachers? So this is a teacher who's moving from classroom to classroom. And if you're like some people I know, they're seeing like 1,500 students a year because they're going to so many classes. Do you have any suggestions, Sarah?
One thing that I have seen is a simple strategy of using, and this is for, I've seen in an elementary classroom, but they used a cupcake. The teacher drew a cupcake on the whiteboard and they established an agreement with the students that once they earned the sprinkles on the cupcake, so it's sprinkle by sprinkle to reinforce the positive behavior, that teacher made an arrangement to reinforce that behavior.
Oh, they worked it out.
One other example.
Okay.
I worked with a teacher who was having behavioral issues in the class, and I gave her the strategy of creating a contest in the class. Every day it's the teacher versus the students. The students got points for being on task, being quiet after the countdown, being kind to others, using patience and raising their hand, pretty much any, oversaturating them with the praise. And the teacher got points if, for example, she counted down from 5 to 1, but the class was still talking. So that in itself, just creating that contest tended to curb a lot of the behaviors in the class. And that is pretty mobile, like you just draw and do tallies on the board. But the point is you're not taking away points from the students, you're praising them and giving them points, and then the teacher earns points instead of it being more negative. It's taking that positive tone.
Okay. I know we have a ton of questions. I'll take a few. I'm gonna just ask these about brag tags. So Maurice Venezia asks, are brag tags something the student keeps or gives back to the teacher at the end of the day? And I'm thinking you can answer this one too. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your name. Maritas, I think, asks, where can we purchase brag tags? So can you ladies answer about brag tags? How that works?
Sure. So the brag tags will be used to identify certain skills that the students have demonstrated. And I have seen this put on chains, so the students wear them as a necklace. And so it's something that they carry with them. But also I have used them as whatever the particular brag tag is relates to a reinforcement of the student's choice. So whether that be preferred activity time or an individual reinforcement.
And would you make those and laminate them, or something you would buy?
Yes, they're available on Teachers Pay Teachers from a variety of sources, and that it's something that you can print yourself and laminate and even customize.
Okay, great. And just one other question, someone asked about, let's see, what's good for middle schoolers? And I would just personally add that for me, the monetary system, money worked very well for my students. Do you ladies have any other suggestions for middle school students?
I've used that tally system I was talking about all through middle school and high school, and I've seen it work just as effectively across all grades. The difference is what happens when the students win enough times. So for example, I used to award Fun Friday. So if they won, 5 days out of X amount of days, they get Fun Friday. So they would be working up towards something. Again, like you said, the token economy system.
I've even seen teachers use like auctions with the money.
Yeah.
So different rewards had different values, but there might be only 2 or 3 of that item available, so they would be auctioned off. And so the kids really like the idea of even thinking, do I want to use more money for this item, or do I want to wait for another item? So it was very motivating. Sometimes I would even try to sell items to other kids with their money. So it just depends on how the teacher utilizes the money system in the classroom.
I also used to do raffles.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I was also used to do raffles where I just pass out tickets to students who are on task and then just pull first place every Friday. And so that student would get to pick a prize. So that is, it's kind of like the token economy system, but it's one student, it's a gamble. So it's one student gets a prize a week.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and I used auctions in my classroom. The kids loved it. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on.
Hi, this is Brandy Willoughby, and I'm going to be talking about queuing systems. So queuing systems are used to release and regain student attention and foster high student engagement. An example of a release and regain attention is more commonly known as the call and response strategy. When the teacher uses routines and gestures to gain and release attention, the students respond rapidly. It decreases loss of instruction time. Furthermore, queuing systems can comprise of verbal or nonverbal cues. Using nonverbal cues helps motivate on-task behaviors and helps reduce and or stop those off-task behaviors that we often see in our classes. This leads to more teaching and learning opportunities in the classroom. The use of queuing systems can help reduce minor behavior issues and distractions within the classroom setting. They can be dealt with effectively without disruption to your instruction. Queuing systems can be used to help reduce and or stop behaviors such as interrupting, daydreaming, distractions, just to name a few. As discussed earlier, once you have established your clear classroom behavioral expectations, the use of queuing systems in your class can help teachers further improve their classroom management. Queuing systems can help teachers reduce a negative display of behaviors, change behavior without interrupting instruction, and be able to reinforce positive displays of behavior quickly and effectively. An example of using verbal cues in the classrooms are the use of the call and response strategy that I talked about earlier. The teacher would say something like peanut butter and the students would respond jelly, or the teacher would say ready to rock and the students respond ready to roll. Examples of nonverbal cues are teachers using gestures and proximity. Using simple sign language, nonverbal cues is a fun and motivating way to communicate with your students. To be more creative, you and your students can develop your own set of signs to use in the class to nonverbally communicate with one another. The use of proximity is also an important nonverbal cue to use to help manage your class. There are various studies that show the positive effects on student engagement, behavior, and learning when teachers circulate around the classroom. At the end of this presentation, we have provided some teacher resources for ideas on verbal and nonverbal cues that you can access right away to use in your classrooms.
Hi, this is Bridget Gross, and I'm going to be going over the next proactive classroom management component, which is praise. But before we delve into praise, I'd like to quickly discuss how teachers sometimes it's difficult for us to not focus on the negative behavior of our students. We see an issue, we immediately want to address it or fix the problem, and there's really nothing wrong with that, trying to fix their behaviors, but we're just proposing that we have a shift here. Instead of focusing on the negative behaviors, we suggest that you use praise to reinforce appropriate behavior. I realize how it's difficult to acknowledge sometimes or even see the good things that some of our most challenging students are doing, especially when they are displaying significant behavior issues. However, not only is this doable, it's crucial in changing student behavior and creating a positive classroom culture. Boys Town suggests a 5-to-1 ratio, meaning that we have 5 comments, 5 positive comments, gestures, or interactions to every 1 correction, reprimand, or negative interaction. We also have a handout at the end of this presentation where you can read more about Boys Town strategies and their an article on praise. This 5-to-1 ratio has been extensively researched and proven to result in a behavior contrast. and rapid learning for expected behaviors. There are 3 types of praise: general praise, which is a verbal or nonverbal cue that indicates approval of behavior; specific praise, which is a combination of general praise and specific description of behaviors that are being praised; and effective praise, which is a structured method of praising students that combines specific and general praise and adds a reason and possibly a consequence to reinforce the behavior. When working with teachers, I cannot stress how important praise is. Not only does praise nurture our students' emotional growth, it builds self-confidence, enhances learning, and fosters a positive relationship with our students. Here are some examples of general and specific praise. So for some general praise, just awesome, fantastic, good job, way to go. Those just simple praises. Specific praise: excellent job sitting in your chair, great effort working on your math assignment. I like how you came in quick, quietly and ready to work. We also have an example here of effective praise. Effective praise is broken into 4 steps: initial praise, describe appropriate behavior, give your rationale, and an optional positive consequence. Effective praise is a higher level of praise. It helps target the behavior expectations you want from your students. So I'll just go ahead and read a whole little script of effective praise, all those steps put together. Joey, you did an awesome job on working with your group. When you work nicely with your friends, they are more likely to want to work with you the next time. Because you worked well with your group, you earned a Caught Being Good ticket. So why do we want to praise? My final thoughts on why it's so important to praise our students is it provides specific contingent reinforcement for positive behavior. It increases the likelihood of consistent future use and generalization of pro-social skills. It helps build relationships, creates a positive learning environment, and increases students' ability to meet the needs of adaptive forms of behavior. Again, remember that Boys Town recommends that you make 5 positive or reinforcement statements for every 1 corrective statement. That 5-to-1 ratio is best practices.
Okay, so it's time for some questions, and I've been trying to answer some questions behind the scenes too. So we're going to give you guys a few minutes. We have some time. We have about 8 minutes to answer questions. And I think we can just, while people are typing, ladies, if you can just continue to answer some questions that I read out to you. So there were some questions about the bucket system. Explain the bucket system a bit more. So could any of you speak to that for about a minute while people are typing in their questions?
Sure. So the bucket fillers is based on the book, Have You Filled a Bucket Today? The book explains the concept of each of us having an invisible bucket. When our bucket is full, we feel great. When it's empty, we feel awful. It goes through the importance and the impact of our words and our actions. So based on the book, it's allowing just how to describe how when we fill others' buckets, in turn, it fills our own. And it's a system for your classroom where students are looking for positive behaviors in others. And they will take, for example, pom-poms to fill somebody's cup or bucket to acknowledge their positive actions. So the system encourages other students to point out the positives from other students, and then they would use once they earn and fill their bucket, they turn it in for whatever their preferred reinforcement is.
I've also seen where the students actually write the deed or whatever it was that the other student did. So they would write it out, and like they weren't necessarily buckets. They kind of made them look like buckets on the wall, but they were really paper. And they just put the little paper note in there, like Jasmine was really nice helping me with my assignment or something like that.
In high school, we used to do kudos. It was kind of the same concept, but all of my students would write kudos to blank for blank. And then every once in a while on a Friday, I'd pull them and read them out loud and then give them to the students. And it just increases the class community, the positivity in the classroom, and they would collect them. And I would even get some and I would tape them all along the back of my wall. And by the end of the year, my whole wall was covered. So just increasing the positivity in the classroom. That's how I did it with high school.
Okay, someone said 5-to-1 is very challenging with challenging students. Any suggestions?
It is very challenging, especially, I know a lot of teachers, I don't want to say they get annoyed, but they find it difficult when we say, okay, well, they just did that really good thing. They came in quietly. And it's a lot of teachers think, well, that's what they're supposed to do. So why should I praise them for that? Exactly. That's why you do praise them for that, because you want them to repeat that behavior. Not only do you want them to repeat that behavior, you want the other students, maybe little Ginny doesn't really have any behavior issues, but the little girl that sits next to her does. If you're praising Ginny for her appropriate behavior, hopefully the other students who are having the challenges will pick up on that.
And I understand sometimes I don't like to say to students, like, I really appreciate you doing this because it is the baseline expectation. So what I like to say is, I see so-and-so on task. I see this person on task. And you're acknowledging that they are on task, and it kind of curves the behavior, and just ignoring the students who are off task, who tend to seek negative attention. Oftentimes they're going to be like, well, I want that attention. And so just acknowledging the students who are on task and saying, thank you, Jimmy, thank you, Suzanne, for being on task. And it is difficult to get that 5-to-1 ratio, but it's one of the things that can pretty easily curb behavior, just increasing it to that level.
And if you look in the handouts, we do have that Voice Town article on praise. I would really suggest that the teachers go ahead and print that out, because it's a great little article. And the 5-to-1 ratio, it is research based. And so, even though it can be challenging for us, trust me, if we create that classroom, that culture of praise, it pays off in the long run.
And sorry to last so long on this question, but just yesterday, so I train horses, and one of the horses that wasn't mine escaped, and I was so angry, and it kept running away from me, and I tried using my teaching techniques, and what I had to do was throw treats at it. So you can think of yourself in that situation where you're like, gosh, what am I supposed to do? This kid is not doing anything right. Just kind of using you. Imagine if I were to yell at that horse, I would never get that horse back in its stall. So I had to throw treats at it and make it walk towards me slowly before taking it back. So you always look for those opportunities to curb that behavior.
Yeah, I think if you guys use the reinforcement inventory too, that'll help you figure that out. We have another question, actually. If you guys are okay to move on, we have another question I want to answer for them. Someone has a student with autism in kindergarten, and they're wondering how they can help them build some social skills with other children.
So all of our backgrounds here we were all special ed teachers in the classroom before our roles as social emotional learning support providers. So working with our children with autism, we find that using social stories is the most effective way to teach social skills in the classroom. That can be done through role play. Julia Cook, who's also backed up by Boys Town, promotes a lot of social skills books. You can create your own social stories to reinforce a positive social skill that you want your student to do with the use of visual support. That's always best to do. They always say that you should start with what you want them to do and always end with what you want them to do. So everything needs to be in that positive verbiage. So instead of no hitting or no kicking, you would say keep hands to self and feet on the floor, right? We always want to tell students what we want them to do, not what we don't want them to do. And that needs to be explicitly stated on the expectation or on the social story with the visual cue. Visual cues, I can't emphasize enough how important they are in the classroom, not only for students on the spectrum, but for all of our students, right? We see signs all day long on the road. Those are the visual cues that we have, and it's really beneficial for our students with autism.
Okay, thank you. And we have 1 more minute. So let's see here. someone asked, what happens when, and I'm sure we've all had this in our classrooms, when none of these positive behavioral interventions work? So we've tried everything. Can we have the misbehaving student write their name on the corner of the whiteboard and maybe have them erase their name? Is there something else that works? Like, what do you suggest people do? I have my own thoughts on it, but I want to hear from you. What do you suggest people do if none of these are working?
Get help. Teachers are always working alone. You don't need to. Find a community. I know that at different schools, I connect with different departments. I've worked with the math department. I've worked with the SPED. I've worked with the English. Teachers don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are resources out there. There are, you got to find your community of support, because it can be really stressful to feel like you're putting your heart into it and being vulnerable, and then these kids are just disrespectful. It can be very disheartening. So take care of yourself and find your group and your tribe that's like-minded, and seek out support, seek out help. I think we all do that, and we all support each other too.
I mean, our district is lucky to have the SDL support that we're able to provide, so we are an additional resource for teachers. We encourage teachers to utilize their PLC times to talk with their grade level to get ideas. Go to your SST coordinators and ask them. They have a wealth of knowledge as well. Go to your school psychologist, go to your principals. Like, these are your colleagues. These are the people that you work with every day. You probably spend most of your time with the people at work than you probably do sometimes with the people at home. And so utilize those resources around you, your colleagues around you, to get that additional support. We don't always profess to have the answer, but we are really good at brainstorming those ideas together and bouncing ideas off each other to support each other.
And I wanted to add that there's also, I mean, when we say that we've tried there are a lot of different interventions to try. We also have to make sure that we are doing those interventions with fidelity, like Sarah was mentioning earlier. We can't say that we've tried something 2 or 3 times and, it didn't work, because behavior takes time to change. And we have to make sure that we are, trying interventions for at least 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks before, and you can try multiple interventions. And on our resources, we have PBIS World, which we'll hopefully have time to get into later on, but that also has a wealth of interventions that teachers can try as well.
I think this also points us back to that forced choice reinforcement survey that you'll find in your handouts, that when we identify what matters to our students, we might need to change what the reinforcement is, and that's okay. It's okay to do that, because we want to make sure that we're connecting and we're understanding where our students are coming from and what they need in order to help them be successful. So that forced choice reinforcement survey can help us identify what really matters to our students.
And finally, don't take things personally. Always assume the student is trying their best to do the right thing and they just don't know how.
Good point.
So next, we're going to talk about how to integrate social skills in the classroom. So by the end of this section, hopefully you will feel more comfortable understanding the different ways you can integrate social skills lessons within your classroom setting. Teaching social skills in the classroom can be done in many forms, as we've discussed earlier. So here we have broken it down into 3 different levels. Appropriate integration of social skills instruction involves teaching, modeling, and reinforcing desired pro-social classroom skills. These skills include following directions the first time, active listening, waiting patiently, sharing with others, and accepting feedback. Just to let you guys know, these levels are fluid and not linear. So you can move in any direction. You can move from level 1 to level 3, or level 3 to level 2. There is differentiation between each level. We're going to go through each level one at a time to better define them and provide you with some specific examples of how to apply the levels in your classroom. So level 1s are the norms that you establish. These norms and expectations should be explicitly posted in your classroom to act as a visual reminder for students throughout the school day. Sometimes these expectations need to be posted on students' desks. I've had to support students with specific expectations by posting on their desk with the detailed steps to follow to act as their visual cue. When I was in the classroom as a primary special education teacher, I posted my circle time norms below my whiteboard at the students' eye level as they sat on the carpet. And that way it was a visual reminder to them what they were expected to do at that time. For our middle school and high school students that have various periods throughout the day, it is important that you have your classroom norms posted as they have to conform to each teacher's expectations and classroom environment. You may want to consider establishing the classroom norms with your students to get their buy-in to help motivate, follow through with the expectations. Creating and establishing the classroom norms are a part of the behavior management system. It is important to remember behavior management systems encompass both classroom behavior expectations and the motivation system. Lastly, modeling the classroom norms is essential. Once the classroom norms are introduced, you need not only to post them, review them as part of your behavior management system, but model them. Students learn best when all learning modalities are activated.
And I just want to add from a middle school perspective, sometimes if you can talk to your grade level teams and like come up with some established norms for all of your classrooms, then that really helps students so they have less to remember and they can practice that throughout the day, not just your classroom, but other teachers' classrooms as well.
This is Sarah Egbert again, and level 2 is about proactively teaching social skills in your classroom. There are a variety of ways to accomplish this, and the first one I'd like to talk about is morning meeting. And we've provided a link in our resources section that we'll get to that is called, it's about responsive classroom. And we're pulling that up here. So the responsive classroom suggests that we do our morning meeting in a circle. And this is a great way to set the tone for our classroom or for our whole school each day. So it's about building community among your students for sharing. And this shows when we allow that time for sharing among ourselves and our students, it shows our students that we care about them, that we're listening to what's going on in their lives and in their minds. And it's building that trust and the depth to the relationship that we need in order to really make a difference. So that relationship really matters in the classroom, and a morning meeting is a great way to set that tone, as well as an opportunity for proactively teaching your social skills. In our district, we are using Boys Town curriculum that has step-by-step instructions for particular social skills. So we really try to make sure that the content that we're using has some common language built in between the skills that we're teaching, the literature that we're using, the lessons that we're using to teach those skills. And what you can see here now is the Boys Town website. And it's a great resource even for some free lessons for how to teach some of these skills in your classroom. Morning meeting would be a great way to do to administer this instruction, as well as some of the social skill books that we can access. Julia Cook is the author of some social skill books that use the Boys Town language. So it's great to be able to use a book to share a story with students about, voice tone. So there's a book called Decibella about appropriate voice tone, and there's a book about accepting consequences, and the book is called Thank You for the Feedback. So there is a lot of literature out there. In addition to, Lakeshore has a collection of books it's called Learning to Get Along book collection, and it's about knowing and following the rules, talking and working it out. So accessing some of those materials for social skill books. There's also content on YouTube. So on YouTube, I actually really like the Social Skills Made Simple group of videos, because again, it uses that common language of the Boys Town skills. And so I really like using that particular one, but there are a variety of resources to watch some social skill videos on YouTube as well.
Welcome to Social Skills Made Simple. Today's social skill is accepting no boy hands.
There's an example.
Welcome to Social.
I'm just going to unpause it for them so they can see it better. Here we go. Okay.
All right, the last level is level 3, integration. Some examples are restorative circles, integrating social skill competencies into standards, goal setting, and corrective teaching. The main idea of this one is it is completely integrated with, for example, California state standards. I'll give you 2 examples of when I've used this in my classroom, one at the elementary and one at the high school. At the high school level, I had them work on building a resume, building a job application, and practicing interviewing. And I taught them social skills that were appropriate in the workplace, which kind of carried over into the classroom and basically in your everyday life. I had them do follow-up writing assignments, but it was really an integration of what social emotional skills do you need to be a successful adult and in the classroom. So we rehearsed and practiced and scripted what it means to embody some of those social emotional pieces. In the elementary school level, currently we're doing a hatching a chicken project. And so what it is we get eggs, we hatch the chickens, but the social emotional skills are taught because students need to have certain behavioral expectations in order to work with the chickens. And so kind of takes the focus off the children and puts it to the chickens. So how do we treat the chickens? How should we speak to the chickens? And this is a really interdisciplinary project where you can weigh the chickens for math and science. You can write about the chickens for literature. Honestly, I've even done the chicken project for middle school and high school as well. It just looks a little different. But that is a good example of how you integrate social emotional learning within the curriculum, because you can combine a lot of these standards with the social emotional learning component.
Okay, so we really only have, we're a little bit behind, so we just have time for one question, and then I'm trying to answer questions as we go, and then we'll also answer these questions after the fact. So someone's asking, we are a PBIS school, so it's Positive Behavioral Interventions and Support, so it's a specific program or framework, actually a framework they're using. How do you address the students' social emotional needs?
I guess you can kind of go back to that diagram we created, starting, of course, with the norms. So make sure that you have the norms in the class. Make sure that it is accessible to the students. So don't just expect them to walk into class and know how to behave. Really have that spelled out. The next step is to spend time teaching those skills. That was level 2 that we mentioned. Level 2 would be just, coming up with a lesson plan revolving around how to maybe set goals for themselves if they're older, maybe younger. I have one class that is particularly, they cry a lot. And so setting up a lesson plan for how to cope in stressful situations. And then the further you go and the more comfortable you get, you can start integrating it. So for example, I gave you the chicken example, I gave you the interview one, but kind of figuring out what you want your lesson to be. And if you're teaching reading, for example, you can practice empathy. So why did this character feel this way? So again, just level 1, level 2, and level 3. And if you feel like you're at level 3 and you're trying to integrate the social emotional learning with the curriculum, and you feel like there's a specific behavior you need to address, go back to level 2 and pick out that behavior. Look at the resources, go to Boys Town and teach them step by step as you would teach them anything else. You really break that behavior down.
And we also have some resources on our CTA.org Pinterest page. So I'll just show you really quickly. I'm just going to pull it up here. So we have some resources for social emotional learning, and I'm going to talk about a training at the end of this webinar where you can get some classroom practices and trainings on that. But we have different boards with resources, and this is another place where you can look. So you just add us on Pinterest, pinterest.com/CTAIPD. So it'll look like this. Okay, and then we have resources there. And then, like I said, I'm going to talk about some resources that CTA has for you as well. Okay. That leads us into SDL Resources, right?
Yes. So we have some resources on classroom management. Yes. If you go down to PBIS World, I mentioned that earlier, yeah. So it clicks on to the home page, and what's fascinating, or awesome actually, about this homepage is there are a wide variety of behaviors. So if your student is having an issue, or you're not sure exactly if this is what the issue is, we're just going to go ahead. Let's just say I have a student who's having issues with impulsivity. So we're going to click on impulsive. And so once you click on your behavior, it'll come up with some, like, my student may. So your student interrupts others, has trouble waiting in turn, taking turns, sharing. So you look at, does that describe my student? Yes, it does. So you click the yes at the bottom, and then it takes you to interventions. So I like on here, I just wanted to pick where it says stand while working. So you list quite a few interventions, but I picked stand while working because I know sometimes we have a hard time with that. But what I love, it tells you why you should do it. And I don't want to read through all of this because I know we don't have a lot of time, but I love how it's saying, listen, these students are having difficulty focusing. It could benefit them to stand while working because it increases their ability to focus and attend. Many students do better with a change in their position and their posture during long assignments. Standing helps provide the brain with extra stimulus. So these are some great things because it tells you, kind of puts the why behind it. Then what should you, when should you do it? You know, when they're having a long time, they have to sit for a long time, maybe a quiz, when the class needs a change. And then you can go down a little bit further to how do I do it? So then it just gives you some examples. You know, you could provide the student with an area that they can sit or stand, and that they can stand and move around. It has a lot of different, the when, the how, and the why, all of that. I love it. If we scroll all the way down, they also have resources. Not all of the interventions have resources, but oh, good, you're on there. It blocked me on my page. But so that sends you to, it has 24 strategies for working with students with ADHD. I know we were looking up for impulsivity, but I'm just showing you how it can also lead you to other resources that can help you with that particular student. So I love PBIS World. It's one of, I know my team uses it a lot. It's also something great that you can use to say if you have an SST coming up, or you're looking for interventions for a student, you can go back to that homepage. And I wanted to show you one more thing. If we just, actually, you can just go up to the top and we can click on Tier 1. So when you click on Tier 1, it brings you to some Tier 1 interventions. And I love how it has just the different behaviors and then more strategies that go along with those behaviors. So I know all of my team, we all use this, and we suggest this to a lot of our teachers as well for when they're looking for strategies and interventions. And like I said, this is also a really good tool to use when you are trying to write your SSTs, your Tier 1 and your Tier 2 SSTs. And if your school is doing like the MTSS process, hopefully you're on the ways to that. This is a great resource for teachers. And if we have, oh, no, go ahead. I know we're short on time.
Yes. So
go ahead, Valerie.
all right. So at this point, we hope that you have found yourself with proactive classroom management components, how to integrate social emotional components in the classroom, and you gained a wealth of resources. If for any reason you feel like you want a little extra help in one of these areas, feel free to reach out to us or double check the resource page or the handouts that we provided.
And I also want to remind you to, so I will actually be responding to everyone via email as well, and I will answer your questions. So you can either contact these ladies, but all of your questions are saved for the webinar, and then I spend the next week or two responding to your questions and getting the resources you need. So just know that CTA has a lot of resources we can support you with. because some of these questions we may not be able to answer today. Okay, so here is our Kahoot giveaway. We appreciate you staying with us today. For those of you who are online, we had almost 200 people online today. So we're doing this little giveaway. Our guest presenters are giving you this book. One person, the lucky number one, will get the Teaching Social Skills to Youth. And then we also have the top 10 scores. Although we had so many people on today, we're going to give away 20 books. They're a book on universal design for learning. They're strategies you can use in your classroom with all students. And it's a book from CTA. There's some training materials that we will give to you. So go ahead at this time. You're going to log on to your phone onto Kahoot It. So either you've downloaded the app, or it should look something like this, kahoot.it. And you should have a game pin available, and that's what I'm actually going to start the game, and it'll have a pin that pops up. So I'm just going to give you a few seconds to get that. Okay, so this is your game pin, 2949124. So we're going to give the top score the Boys Town book, and then the top 20 scores are going to receive a Universal Design for Learning. Make sure you use, I should have told you, make sure you use a name that's in the registration or something close so that we know who you are. And the questions are going to pop up on my screen, so you'll need to just look at the webinar screen for the questions, and then little shapes will appear on your phone, and that's how you're going to answer. We still have people signing on, so it'll start, I think, once we're done with that. And something, I like to use Class Dojo. That also worked well. I know that wasn't mentioned today, but if you guys are using Class Dojo, that's a great way to track behaviors. So I just wanted to mention that while we're waiting. And I think once people stop signing in, then we should be able to start. So I'm going to ask no more people to sign in so we can go ahead and get started, because it won't start until there's any more movement. Okay, so there are 5 questions. Are you ready? Do you have to move through the teaching social skills continuum linearly? So this was the triangle you saw. And that's yes or no. Okay, and the answer was no. Okay, next question. To prevent negative behaviors, what should you explain about behavioral expectations? Why those expectations exist? They exist to make your life easier, or what those expectations look like? So remember, it's all about the why. Question 3, what are some reasons for motivational systems? Is it consumable rewards, peer approval, and intrinsic approval, adult approval, competitive approval, and peer approval, or adult approval, peer approval, and intrinsic need? So we didn't mention anything about intrinsic approval today for students. Question 4, what is the ratio you should use for positive praise versus correction with a student? And the answer was 5 to 1. And last question, which is an example of specific praise? Is it awesome? Is it when you work well with your friends, they like it better? Or I like how you came in quietly ready to work? Okay, congratulations. Thank you very much, you guys. This is actually gonna save for me. I'll just move this out of the way. So we're gonna download that report and get everybody their prizes. So thank you for playing. And I just wanna go ahead and finish up our webinar. Sorry, and I'm having troubles with my technology. Okay, so here's the contact information. Go ahead and take a screenshot if you want to of this. These are the email addresses for Sarah, Bridget, Valerie, and Brandy. This is not in the printed slideshow that you guys are gonna get when you leave, or if you are viewing this recording, this will not be posted online again. So please send a screenshot. If for some reason you don't get the information, just shoot me a question on here or shoot me an email, ktaylor@cta.org, and I can point you in the right direction. And then I just want to thank you guys for being here today. So we do have some additional trainings coming up. So the Instruction and Professional Development Department receives a very small portion of your CTA dues, but we do put trainings on every year. We host a summer institute and we host a pre-conference for the Good Teaching Conference in Northern and Southern California. So our training this next year on February 1st and March 22nd, it's a one-day training. It's called From Brain Science to Instructional Practice. We're gonna have a really fantastic keynote speaker, neuroscientist Kenneth Weston, who's gonna lead participants through the connection between executive functioning and the social emotional link to the brain. And then we're gonna have a series of electives. You'll have a choice of 2 electives that you can attend in the afternoon. Oops, sorry. And those will all be centered around classroom management strategies, student-centered pedagogy, social emotional learning strategies. So it's a very hands-on workshop. And then we don't have any information posted right now, but if you go to ctago.org, which I'm going to just post right here in the notes to everybody. If you go to ctago.org, in the next few months, we'll have information on our IPD Summer Institute, and we're centering all of that around social emotional learning, executive functioning, really getting into the nitty-gritty of why some of our students behave the way they do and how we can really address it on a deeper level. So I just want to thank all of you for attending today. There were almost 200 of you online, and I'm sure there are many more of you watching the recording at home. So materials can be found at this bit.ly link right here. So bit.ly/IPDPB, as in positive behavior, not peanut butter. And a future recording will be sent out and will be kept at www.cta.org. I forgot the /IPD on the trainings page. So the same page that you went to sign up today, that will actually have all of our webinars housed on it. So it looks like this. And then if you click on trainings, then you'll see our fall 2018 webinar series. This was the last webinar for the fall. I don't believe we will have any this spring. We might have 1 or 2, but for sure, again, we'll have at least 3 more next fall. And then you can also see our recordings from the spring. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you to our guests for being here today. We love supporting teacher leadership, and have a wonderful school year.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.